So stats on Instagram, which brings me on to this. This diary is 21 years old. Back in January of 2000. Glenlyon Dam, August 2020. And my notes, so right now we're talking about positions of the fish on the structure, not just, so all this information at that point in time was pivotal to me catching more fish. So the Gold Coast Canals, Berkeley Summer Series, got all my positions. I've got a drawing on where I want to cut out the hard part of the gulp. Hey guys, I can't believe after all this time we're back here again in lockdown. Basically for me anyway, with my foot and that little wire coming out of my toe. I've pretty much been in isolation anyway, so I've got 2 weeks left needing this boot, which sounds horrible when I walk and feels horrible to walk on. But that's not what I want to talk to you about in this video. I can't walk and talk because listen, sounds like the world's worst high heels. So I did a bit of a questionnaire on my Instagram account the other day. A, find out a little bit more about you guys, and B, just do a little bit of research for video ideas for YouTube. So the stats on Instagram, 29% of you said you have a fishing diary. So that was 193 people voted for yes for having a fishing diary. So I'm keen to see who has one possibly older than mine. So all these trophies would not be possible without two key things. Firstly, research, which involves the internet, maps as you've seen, YouTube videos. When you're on the internet, you're also looking at people's blogs, stuff like that. The main thing I want to talk to you about is your own research, and not so much research, it's recording, which brings me on to this, a fishing diary. So I've done my fishing diary off and on. It goes in stages depending on where I am and what level I am to do with targeting a certain species. So whenever I'm learning a new fish, I like to use a fishing diary, but what I found with all the video work and stuff that I do, that is basically my fishing diary. So it's easy for me to just look back through YouTube videos and see exactly when I was catching fish and what I was catching them on. It's little details that you put in this book and just writing them down that help you get a better understanding of what actually happened for yourself that day. So I started this book back in January of 2000. This diary is 21 years old. I don't think I own anything else that would be 21 years old. Yeah, I might have some lures from back then, but that would be about all. So early entries were very, very simplistic. What I caught, when I caught it, how I caught it, weather, and location. So one of the key things that I find about having a diary is times of year for species, especially people that target multi-species fish, like what I like to do. I haven't targeted a fish for a fair while, say trout for example, in this diary. Not letting me only go off this from January in 2000, but just saying. So in January, just by reading this, I know that Lake Yukonbean was fishing fairly tough, wasn't easy. I'm going to avoid January. But when I flip further through the diary and I see the month that we're in now, and I see me catching 50 to 100 bass a day in places like Lake St. Clair and Glenbourne, and I haven't targeted bass for maybe 3 years now, been a while. That reminds me, and then if I want to chase bass, I know right now is a prime time. So let's skip forward a few years. Now I'm looking at 2004. I didn't fish tournaments then, didn't even know tournaments existed. So all this information was pre-tournaments. It wasn't a thing I did for research for tournaments. This was just for me to better understand how to catch fish. I'm brim fishing in Newcastle Harbour with lures. And back then for me that was very, very new. I had so much to learn, and my notes changed so dramatically to tell me what I need to do. Here, for example, I even drew pictures. So I'm fishing the pylons in Newcastle Harbour, which I don't think you're allowed to do anymore. So I'm fishing super tight to these pylons with little curl tail plastics. Even fishing tidal stuff was new to me then, obviously. So I've put high tide and low tide so I could understand with a drawing exactly what I meant with water levels. So I put in here little notes like most fish were caught on the turn of the tide. As time goes on after you're talking to your mates or whatever, so we only caught 6 fish fairly decent sized bream. But unless you wrote down little things about the timing and stuff when you caught them, that story or whatever you tell your mates, oh, we caught 6 big bream in the harbour the other day. You go back there in 2 weeks at a similar time and you can't catch anything because it's a different tide and you didn't pay attention to last time, especially when you're new to it, that you caught those fish at the turn of the tide. So here we go, looking further on, same thing, fish were caught on the turn of the tide again underneath the pylons. Drawn above. I've even gone down as far to write knots attaching my braid to my leader. And I'm fairly certain that's not how you spell Albright knot. And I would never tie an Albright knot ever again these days. I'm FG for life. As almost everybody should be. Last little picture I even put in here is about running a loop knot and how we rigged the plastic to rig it weedless. Remembering that all this looks very simplistic to me now anyway, and probably to most of you guys watching, but back then this was looks like my second ever attempt at catching bream on soft plastics. So all this information at that point in time was pivotal to me catching more fish. So let's jump forward a few more years. Actually, before I jump too far ahead, these drones are from 2004 as well. So right now we're talking about positions of the fish on the structure, not just high, low tide and where they were. I'm talking about physical positions I've tracked them down to now. Colours that we preferred up to here. So I've even done a side-on view and a front view. Actually, I remember this now reading this. We nicknamed this area the fish farm because it basically was chock-a-block full of bream at turn of the tide. Tide obviously backs off in the harbour there, and the fish can lift up and they can play around on their oysters. That's what all the little squiggly parts are on the water level on these pylons, is oysters. So we'd work out at the right level of tide, the oysters were just lapping in the water, so you've got a little bit above, a little bit below, and slack water or less current for the bream to be able to up there and feed around, and they were literally just mooching around everywhere and apparently pretty easy to catch. Right, so we'll jump right forward now. So we're in 2007 now. This is my second year of fishing for bass and first year of fishing tournaments. So we've got Gold Coast Canals, Berkeley Summer Series, got all my positions, Tweed River and Lake Sinclair. So it looks like, and I never thought about this, in 2004 I started chasing bream on lures. In 2007 I've moved to Queensland and took on my first bream tournament and finished 4th. So jump forward even further now to 2012. Now it's bass tournaments and the detail in here is pretty full on. Glenbourne Dam, for example, caught 17 fish on gulps, dropping into schools around Big House Bay. Camo colours most consistent. Used a 3/16 Arky Gamakatsu jig head because the jig head swam down rather than spiraled down, so we noticed that straight away. A size 16 Stinger was the best. Caught most of the fish near trees or submerged structure. Fair enough. If landed one fish, generally went quiet and it was best to move on. That was basically my rule when I fished for these deep fish in the end anyway, and I never even thought about the fact that in 2012 was the first time I did it and I noticed it. Little things like that, if you're doing them all the time, yes, they lock in. If you're not doing it all the time and you only go to there once a year or whatever, it pays to have that written down so you don't waste 2 or 3 days there. Now later in 2012, I'm at Somerset. Somerset is very new to me back then. The detail I've written down for Somerset is next level. So I have the date, 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, 11th, 12th of August. I have water temperature, minimal cloud, light to medium wind. All this stuff, now that I've fished for bass in Somerset a lot, makes a big difference to know. So minimal cloud means they'd definitely be biting. Light to medium wind, perfect. It's like 3/4 of a page of information about how I caught them, why I caught them, where I caught them, and how I went from one pattern getting a bite to working out a better way to catch them, for example. So I had 1 or 2 on ice jigs, then dragged a mask on the bottom and had heaps of hits as a drag on the bottom. No hookups. Decided to drag, pay attention, drag, all-rounder, which I'll explain in a bit, on a 1/2 ounce Gamakatsu head. Caught fish straight away, got a few more taps, went to the cutty yard to see if we could work up on those fish, and caught around 20 more. So even just by reading those little bit of notes, it reminds me what was happening in that time. So these are shut down fish. Couldn't catch them, couldn't get them by. Had to ice jig them, which means obviously shut down. Decided to drag a mask and got tapped straight away. So then decided, well, hang on a minute, I'll throw my plastic. Caught them straight away and went back to another location where we had seen fish but couldn't catch them. Same technique and caught 20 fish. So it completely turned our day around like that. And just by reading this in August, beginning of August, now if I'm going to go to Somerset next month, these are the things I'm going to look for. I'm going to look for fish hard on the bottom. I'm going to drag plastics rather than hop them and wind them. Allrounder is an avocado, I think it's called avocado glitter bass slider. I nicknamed this thing Allrounder because I, at that point in time, had caught bass in almost every impoundment that we fished tournaments in. Sinclair was the first one where the Allrounder started working. Then Glenbourne. Then I moved to Queensland. I caught him in Boonduma. And then I caught him in Somerset. Hence the name Allrounder. Actually, in saying that, I don't even think I own a slider anymore. Right, so we just skipped forward. And I've just seen another little drawing. This is a year on from my first attempt at vertically gulping bass. So this is only the next time that I get to do it. I've got a drawing on where I want to cut out the hard part of the gulp and exactly what I want that to look like, how I want it to swim. So I want it to be very symmetrical. I haven't fished vertically for bass long time. Just reading through these, it's triggered so many little memories about how I work stuff out and how I did it. I'd be quite confident now going straight back to Glenbourne this January, February and bang bass straight out of the gate just from this information. So this information doesn't have to be, like in your diary, you don't chase bass. Not everyone likes chasing bass. Be Murray cold, whatever it is. But it's all key things like the date, the weather, how they bit, water quality, water clarity, like water temperature, wind. Wind makes a big difference. If it's calm and sunny, it's going to be a different bite to if it's windy and overcast. So jumping all the way forward now to 2017, one of these entries that caught my eye is the Grand Final Bass Nation Championship that I won. Having won a tournament, you would think you don't need to write anything down. But I had so much to learn from this tournament that I felt necessary to write this down. Even if just the process of writing stuff down, I feel like seems to secure it for me. But this particular tournament, I fished every session completely different. Session 1, for example, my plan didn't work for fishing deep, and I went to squirrels and caught a few fish off the bank. Session 2, I caught my fish out in the deep, which is what my original plan was, using spoons. Session 3, the final session, which was key because I was, I think at the time, third. A bit of ground to make up. I really needed the top 2 people to fall out, and that's where this played such a big pivotal role for me. They didn't catch their fish, and my squirrels didn't work, and my spoons didn't work, so I fished plastics to the bank. Squirrel session 1, deep session 2, slow rolling plastics session 3, all in completely different spots to catch my full limit every time. So I went from 4 fish first session to 10 fish second session, and third session 15 or something fish. So I caught more and more fish every session, but completely changed my technique every time. So I felt like, even though I won that tournament, I'm pretty sure I came straight home and wrote all this information down in this diary just because at the time I was obsessed with fishing tournaments, and I felt this information is pivotal for me improving. So my last entry in the diary, Glenlyon Dam, August 2020. So new species, new lake, and it took me till August 2020 of chasing cod to start writing back in my diary again. So I've basically got 21 years information in this diary for multiple species, from trout to bream to bass. I've got some marlin stuff in there, I've got some GT stuff in there, and I've only put a little bit of Murray cod stuff in there. But my whole point of this video is writing down little bits of information like that. It might seem mundane at the time, or you might think I'm never going to forget that. Some of that information is 20 years old, and I guarantee you, if I went back to those same places, same lakes, at the same time of year, there would be very, very, very similar bite patterns. So many times I'm going to the same lake at the same time of year, and I know exactly what to throw and precisely how to fish that bait. So these days, because I basically video everything that I do, all my fishing now, I basically got the video camera running, GoPro's running all the time. So it's easy now to look back at some of those videos and see precisely how I was winding, possibly where I was casting even, stuff like that. And time of year and the baits that I'm using obviously as well. And you can tell by the video how they're eating it. Are they choking it? Is it just hooked? Etc. And I can tell like tough videos where the session was tough. What I'm sort of getting at, if you're not filming, but just take that 5 to 10 minutes, just jot down. Even if it was a bad trip, it's probably more important if it was a bad trip to write it down. And especially if you're trying to work out a new species or going to new lakes. You go back and look a year ago at your entry for catching bass at some lake and see how you caught 2 and you didn't understand what was going on. And you look at your entry now, a year later, and you caught 20 and you're disappointed because you forget where you came from. Let me know in the comments if anyone has an older fishing diary than me, if anyone even still does have a fishing diary, and also let me know if any of you are thinking of starting a fishing diary. I never really took into account barometric pressure. Never thought of it as a factor, and now with what I know, it definitely is. Barramundi, I never took into account tide and stuff like that, and now I'm a big believer in that. Let me know. I want to know if anyone has an older diary, what sort of information you put in there, if you're now going to start a diary, and all reasons why you don't run a diary. Either way.